Welcome to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the PulpNet, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Online at thepulp.net. In this Pulp Event podcast, Kalb and William Lampkin discuss Selling the Shadow, a look at how the shadow was promoted in pulp magazines, on radio, and in films, from 1930 through the mid-1950s. Chris and his brother, David, are publishers at Age of Aces Books. William is proprietor of the PulpNet, and editor of the Pulpster. This event was recorded on Friday, August 20, 2021, at PulpFest 2021 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
I was going to start by asking Chris when
No. We should start by sending Dwight's regrets. Right. So yeah, Dwight's, pretty bummed he can't be here to share his collection with you. But he has given us permission to show his collection. So we're still going to be looking at all the great stuff. We won't get all the fun anecdotes. We won't get any of the bragging, but we'll get to see some awesome stuff along with other things that we've collected in the way of, say, premiums, products, and promos. Promotion for this. It's really just an excuse to have a really fun slideshow of like all this stuff that isn't the pulp around the shadow.
And hopefully Dwight will be here next year.
Yes, exactly.
But anyway, so going back to the beginning. So Chris, how did you discover the shadow?
It's hard to say, but I know that there was a book that I used to get out of the library that had a huge influence on me that combined pulps and premiums and even serials, and it was called Jim Harmon's Nostalgia Catalog. I don't know if anybody knows it, but I would get it out of the library, and it had chapters on Doc Savage, Shadow, showed premiums, all the things that I'm into now. I got this book out, and it just, I guess, must have changed my life, because here I am giving the star. But how did you find out about the Shadow?
Well, it's sort of like the Shadow was always there. I don't remember first learning about him, but was reading the paperback reprints in the late 60s, early 70s. There was a local FM station that would play the radio program at 10 o'clock every night. And so I started recording that back when I was probably 10 years old, 12 years old.
So you have recordings?
I have recordings.
Of the episodes?
Of the episodes, yes.
Okay.
Still do.
You can buy those?
Yeah, I know. But, the shadow was always there for us. But in the 30s, late 20s and early 30s, there was no shadow. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, how we came about.
Yeah, well, we'll give you a little teaser, of course, because we do want to show that this is where Dwight lives. He lives with all of this great stuff. This is sort of when you walk into his apartment.
The Shadow Sanctum.
This is his living room where he's got, actual paintings by George Rosen, along with these great signs, which, again, we'll take a closer look later. All of these, great collectibles. I think we'll probably see a lot of these in close-up as we move on. But we do kind of have to start at the beginning when, the Shadow wasn't something to be sold. He was the seller. He was a marketing gimmick for a Detective Story Hour, which was radio program, which was based on the Detective Story magazine.
Yeah, which aired at 9:30 on Thursday nights.
That's right. And the nice ad is, of course, from a newspaper. The boring ad was from a pulp. He started out as just an announcer, and then he actually became the narrator, injecting, all of his catchphrases, the Shadow knows, and all that stuff. And that took off, right?
Right, yeah. And so he became very popular and stuff, and I guess our listeners started asking for the Shadow magazine.
Right, exactly. Exactly. At the same time, Blue Coal got involved in a second series, which was actually called Blue Coal Radio Review. But they were still doing mystery stories with the Shadow as narrator. And that actually continues for a while, even when the Shadow becomes a real character. And leading up to the first issue, they ran this contest for many weeks in Detective Story magazine to describe the Shadow. And this is sort of the first way they were going to sell this and promote this very first issue of the Shadow. Now, the results of the contest, you'll see in the last thing there, it wasn't until July. But all of the other issues lead up to April of 1931, which Laura mentioned, which is the first issue of the Shadow. So, wow, all this buildup. What does the Shadow look like? Are we going to get the answer? And no.
No.
Yes.
Let's pull a file illustration out of the files. And,
Exactly. It's funny because they went to a lot of work to promote this, but they didn't spend any money on a cover. But we do get an illustration of Frank Blackwell, which is a very convincing shadow. They almost have the look down.
In the very first
but as we discovered, going through this sort of chronology of this weird period before he gets the red and the black hat, a lot of strange things happen, right? So these are the next issues, and again, right? There's another reprint. Another reprint cover. But the third issue, they start to sort of show the shadow. There's a shadow behind the characters. There's this weird hooded character at the bottom who is, in a sense, the shadow in the series. And that goes on for 3 months. Obviously, it started out quarterly. It becomes monthly, October, November, December. But who is that guy? It turns out that he was the original narrator of the detective story Hour, James Lecurto, and he posed in some of these promotional shots, and they used those as the basis for the hooded character. But it's interesting because by 1931, he wasn't the announcer anymore. Right. Frank Reddick had already taken the role. I don't think but this hooded character. Sorry, Mike, how do I go back? Like this. Okay. Yeah, this hooded character. It looks like they were planning on using him from the beginning, right? Because this is a postcard that promotes The Shadow, a detective magazine, which is the name of the first 2 issues, to kind of promote it. And they obviously didn't have a cover of him, but they were already using him in these postcards. Again, this is from Dwight's collection. This is a super rare postcard that was sent out.
It's from 31. We don't know exactly what month it was.
Yeah, I'm just saying because it refers to the title of the magazine from the first 2 issues. Yeah. It probably is that. And they used the hooded character. It's a Paul Orban illustration, as we learned the other night. Even these ads even appeared in 1932, well after the shadow we know was established. Mm-hmm. These were from Picture Play. And Carl Shadow and Dwight sort of did a lot of research, so I want to give them credit for that. But this is Frank Reddick, who took over as the announcer and became, in a sense, the first Blue Coal Premium, if you wanted an autographed photo of the shadow, and appeared in a lot of promotional, like articles, like cover of Radiolog and all that. And he does have a fedora. And this was happening at the same time as the hooded character was on the cover.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But you found this one.
Yeah, this is sort of the Consumer Electronics Show of the 1930s. They were having this St. Louis program, and they're demonstrating television and radio. And Frank, the Shadow, was going to be there in person. And he was masked for a while. And then finally, I guess on the last day, they unmasked the Shadow, and it was Frank Reddick, of course.
Yeah, because they were doing this whole promotion that, like, this is how they were selling the radio show. Nobody knows who he is. He sneaks into the office, and we don't know who it is. Probably everybody knew, but they did this then big event where they get to sort of show that it's him.
But at the same time, he was also.
That's right. So this is September of 1931, and this is September 1930. This is September 1. And so they were doing these shorts that we've been watching every night, if you stay late, of the detective story Hour kind of version of The Shadow. And Frank Reddick voiced the first one because it was shot in New York, and then the other ones were, were done in Hollywood with a different, much larger,
Orson Welles-like character.
Shadow character. But these are great lobby cards, showing at least 4 of the 5. But you can see even they were kind of struggling with, like, what is the shadow? Is it just a silhouette? Is it a guy? There's no branding. Yeah. We both did branding for PulpFest and marketing, and we're like, where's the brand manager? It's all over the place.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a literal shadow of one of the characters from the movies.
That's right. Actually, one of the silhouettes syncs up with just a random person, not the actual shadow. Yeah. But it was pretty cool. So in 1932, right, that's when we really start to establish the shadow look
as we know it.
We know it. Yeah. Now they still have this hood cover, but that had to be arranged in advance because it's got the silver plate. So that was kind of a leftover image But you'll see in February and March, they were starting to do the fedora stuff. Even though, again, for radio listeners who are familiar with the hooded version, he's still down there in the corner. And they then reused with gold ink. And again, if you want to talk about selling the shadow, these special inks were like a way to really draw the eye on the newsstand. Meanwhile, this is a really good local story, actually.
Yeah.
Perfecto Light was doing a season of just 5 episodes of the Shadow season in January of 1932, using another silhouette. And this guy's got a top hat. If we look at some other pictures, he's got a cane.
He almost looks like the Whisperer in some ways with a pointed chin.
Yeah. But anyway, it's interesting because there's all these different looks for the Shadow. And it's just kind of fun to kind of explore the sort of Wild West period, I guess.
Yeah, actually, the local angle with that is.
That's right.
The company that was advertising
Perfecto Light.
Perfecto Light was based here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and then Perfecto Light's a special kind of headlight.
Yeah.
Yeah. But here we go, guys. Here we go. This is where we really establish the look of the Shadow. And again, in July here, they used the silver ink. And I feel like they knew this is it. This is the image that we really want to promote. And so we're going to do the special silver ink again, and we're going to get people on board. And
yeah, it's almost like they settled on the image, but as we'll discover, they didn't.
Right. Well, right. There's still other people showing different images of the Shadow, but they're starting to now. They know what they've got, and they're like, and we're going to sell the out of this because that same issue, July, they introduced the hardcovers, like the first product of the Shadow. You know, people are asking for back issues of the magazine. We'll make these hardcovers. Starting with the Living Shadow was advertised in the July issue. And I think that is the ad. Of course, over on Doc Savage. Doc Savage was
33.
Yeah, 33. They were doing these other. They were doing books. There's a lot of great imagery around that. And then also in July of 32, this is the answer to the trivia question.
But
the Shadow Club.
But it's also the second Shadow Club.
What?
Explain that.
Well, yeah, it's really funny. In January, okay, the Shadow's this big deal. He's like eclipsed detective story magazine, and they're sitting around the office and they're like, let's start a club for the Shadow magazine, and no one thinks to use the Shadow. They started a club called the National Protective League, and so this is in January, and you would send in 5 cents, and they didn't give you anything. You would just send in your 5 cents. And then, but you would tell stories about how, like, yeah, I think my neighbor's a fence, and like it was, it's like ratting on your neighbor's stuff, and then, and that was the whole thing. And then it was in July of the same year they were like, oh wait, we can.
Probably the kids were asking for the Shadow Club.
Exactly. And they did overlap slightly, but then they decided that they were doing the same thing, and we got to cut pages in the back, and we'll just combine them. So yeah, we got the Shadow Club, and later on they came up with this logo, which seems to be based on Ghost of the Manor, which is very cool. But now we get to talk about the premiums. Okay, the Shadow lapel stuff. Do you have one of these?
I do. Yes, a couple actually.
That's cool. How much did you pay for it?
I don't recall, but I also have one that somebody had silver plated later.
Oh, they silver plated it? That's very cool. Actually, there are different variations of that. But let's go back to exactly what you got when you sent in your 25 cents in coin or stamp. You got the badge, sort of a nickel silver badge. It came on this nice presentation card, which some people call a membership card, but there's nothing about membership on there, except it says Dear Member. And then you've got the envelope. And of course, the envelope and the card are the hardest things to get, right? But you have them, right?
I do not, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not a competition. And then, so I was talking about variations. So the regular one is on the left. That's what regular one. That's the one that they sold the most of. It's the lapel stud.
The boys' version.
We're calling it the boys' version because the girls' version had a pin because you wouldn't be wearing a blazer, let's say. And then there's this really weird, seems to be a prototype version where they'd done the Shadow Club logo, and then someone's like, that is terrible. Have you read Ghost of the Manor? And then they did the proper sort of logo. And it came in sort of a gold, or it might just be because it's a prototype, it still has kind of a brass finish, I'm not sure. Very cool. But so those studs were offered in 1933. We're going to jump ahead to 1934 with the second premium, which is the Shadow Secret Message, which is a message from the Shadow. Now, if you weren't a member, you had to write in to get it. But if you're already a member of the Shadow Club, they send it to you automatically.
Oh, really?
Now, how cool would it be if they didn't tell you it was coming?
So what do we know? What's the message?
Well, I asked Dwight to dip this in water so that we could read the message, and he didn't want to do it.
He declined.
I don't know why he did it. I don't know why he didn't want to do it. But anyway, it's a fun premium, and not a lot of these probably still exist because you had to put them in water, and then I don't know what happened after that. It's pretty cool. And then also in 1934, I think that one was in April. This one's more July. There's the stamper, which it gives you sort of the member of the Shadow Club. That you can make your own stationery. That was the idea.
Unless you cut off the member name.
Yeah, this one's weird. This is one you see a lot pictures of, and it's the only pictures I could find that were clear, where the person actually took out the word member, they shaved it off, and they also gouged out the word club. So it doesn't actually give you that stamper. The other thing is it also came in a little bag, a little pouch. And this is Dwight's, and instead of, he's cropped it out photographically, the word member. I can't get a good picture of this. I have the Doc Savage one, I don't have the Shadow one, and I guess it's important to mention that they also did a Nick Carter one.
Yeah.
They did a lot of the pulp heroes of Street Smith had sort of the same premiums coming out. But not the Secret Message. The Secret Message was specific to the Shadow, who's very much into codes and stuff. Ooh, okay, but now that we've established the look of the Shadow, let's look at some of these awesome posters that Dwight has collected.
I was going to say, this is starting to advertise towards the reader, trying to get them to buy the magazine now, not listen to the radio show necessarily.
Yeah, well, this is a great one because we can see there's a great photograph of this poster in context, and you can see how this is even like a newsstand, like you think of it. It's just sort of a news stall, and you put it on a stool, and people use these things in different ways. This is a really great poster. Was this one that Steranko reprinted?
Yes,
and then also this one as well, I think. So those are great specialty pieces of artwork. A lot of the signage that came out was, of course, based on covers.
And that looks familiar.
He's like, this is so cheesy, man. Yes, that does look familiar. We saw that on Mobsmen, and the silver cover. Yeah. It's the same image. And that's probably the very first, it's obviously the earliest sign that Dwight has found looking for these things.
And I think that sort of illustrates, the pulps were cheap to begin with, and so they weren't spending a whole lot of money developing new illustrations.
And remember, this is even before they'd established kind of the look of the Shadow.
That's true, yes.
So they were just sort of reusing what they had. And you'll also see how that ties in with the newspaper giveaway that we're going to show. But a lot of times with these pulp window signs, as they're called, 11 by 14, they would have this sort of border, and they would paste on the Shadow one. All of the, if you find Doc Savage, if you find Nick Carter, it has that from coast to coast, Street and Smith magazines, it has that sort of outline. The Shadow, though, got an additional special one. He knows, who the Shadow, is with different covers. You can find it with different covers. There's one of these on the floor, last I checked.
So it's still there.
At those prices, it's still there. And then and the Shadow also got this sort of deluxe, bigger one where they pasted on a cover in the middle of it. And it's got the Shadow's hand, you can see, holding the scales of justice. And those are very cool. And now this is a small kind of a poster. This is a sticker.
Yeah, this is just a few inches large. And it would go in, the window of a dealer or something that they would, to advertise what they sold inside. They also did them for Doc Savage.
Yeah.
And Pete Rice.
And Bill Barnes.
And Bill Barnes
And Nick Carter. But they were much smaller. The Shadow actually is the biggest one. Okay. I've collected a couple of the others. The Shadow's a big one. And true story, Billy and I are bonded for life because we went in together on a set of 2 of these at a PulpFest auction. Yeah. And here's a poster that's really calling out the Detective Story Hour, or now at this point it's probably called The Shadow, but they're still doing Detective Story anthologies with The Shadow as the narrator. but it ties in with the pulp because they were doing secret messages in the radio show that you would match up with the magazine.
Yeah, Walter Gibson was real big into codes and secret messages, and so this sort of ties in with that, the stories.
But what's interesting, because the pulp did this ad, it's one of the few posters, probably the only poster from this period that shows the pulp shadow. Because if you look at, like, say, this trolley sign from 1932, Blue Coal is still just showing the old, sort of images of the shadow, kind of generic, nothing to do with the pulp. This one's even in 34, and it's still just kind of the silhouette, which is kind of cool. Oh, so let's talk about this another kind of newsstand. Thing.
So these were giveaways, trying to get people to read the magazine. So they would produce, was it 16 pages, 18 pages?
Yeah, like a signature, 16 pages.
Yeah, 16 pages signature. And we were looking at one of them. It was about 4 chapters.
Yeah, so chapters. Looking at the back, it doesn't actually, the story doesn't end at the end of a chapter. They just got to page 16 and then pasted up, it sounds good. And then they could write the copy that, that gives the promo stuff.
Yeah, it sort of ends with a kind of a dramatic statement. And
yeah. So these are cool. And so all they had to do really is reprint the signatures or the pages as they were in the pulp, renumber the numbering, and then they added at the bottom just this line, a book-length novel complete with March 15th number.
So just backing up to explain the signature. So they were printed in...
Do we have to explain the signature?
Maybe so. Printed in these small sections.
Yeah, that's right. You've seen how a pulp is. It's like, there's like these little,
then they bind all those together and glue them together in the pulp.
Yeah, but those are really cool, and they're super rare. They're pretty rare. So we've talked sort of about the mid-30s and how up to this point, the Shadow on the radio has remained a narrator of like mystery stories or specifically detective, story magazine stories.
There has been rumor that he did Love Story, but we haven't really been able to.
Yeah, there's right, exactly. Well, Martin Graham's has sort of shut down the Love Story thing, but Walter Gibson said also that he narrated Love Stories, which I think is funny. We all think it's funny, so we love that story, so we repeat it. But in 1937, everything changes, and the Shadow starts to sort of explode. Because the Shadow is on the air, on the screen, and in this magazine exclusively. And the magazine itself is now promoting this kind of multimedia experience. Unfortunately, they have said that this is Rod LaRock, and it is not Rod LaRock from the movie Shadow Strikes, which was coming out in 1937. It's Bill Lawler, at the time assistant art director.
Street and Smith, yeah.
But this picture is going to come up again and again. Like they did, I guess, take it as kind of a quote-unquote official photo of the Shadow. So in 1937, we start to get what's called the continuity, I guess, Shadow on the radio. The Orson Welles stories that we all know and love. And the promotion for that starts to now look more like the pulp character, and things kind of come together, and that image of the Shadow kind of solidifies. But this is amazing. I just love this poster. And Dwight, if he was here, would tell you that this was found face down in a barn in northern Pennsylvania. So if anyone's here local to Pennsylvania, check your barns, because these are pretty valuable. And here's another one. And it's interesting. This seems to be an ad for Blue Coal offices. Because it says, this is your program, this will help you sell more Blue Coal. It seems to be, it'd be next to the kitten poster, the inspirational kitten poster. They put this up next to it by the water cooler, I guess.
Shadow wants you to sell Blue Coal.
Super rare. Oh, and trolley signs. This is a great one, but again, you can see they're now using the actual image of the Shadow. Obviously, we could say a lot about red and yellow and how those things sell. And this is a really good extreme example where they literally just used a pulp cover to be a B.F. Good. This is when B.F. Goodrich in '38 was the sponsor, and I think this is the Voice. Maybe somebody else out there knows, but I think the issue was the Voice. And you'll see this image is also used for some merchandise. Yeah. So it's kind of like I think Street and Smith was identified this as a image that is sort of a, what would they call it? Like I don't want to say clip art. But it's sort of like an official, official thing.
And like in the 70s, it was also used as the comic book, coloring book.
Oh yeah,
cover.
there's a coloring book cover. Yeah, right. There's all that kind of stuff.
We're not going into that.
But so in 37, there was also the movies, starting with The Shadow Strikes, Rod LaRock. And so that is Rod LaRock, not Bill Lawler. And that was the first one. And then there was also International Crime, which you can see from the pictures, didn't have the shadow in it. It was a
Lamont Cranston detective.
Yeah.
Thing. And stick around, we'll be showing that later tonight. So.
That's right. That's right. I mean, we didn't really tease it well then.
No, we didn't.
We shouldn't have told them that it didn't have a shadow in it. But yes. So here's Bill Lawler gun. So in 38, this was like the last, I guess you'd say, premium for the Shadow Club. It's a portrait that you'd send away for. You'd find 3 consecutive coupons. Well, they didn't have to be consecutive, I guess. Just 3 coupons from the magazine. Clip them. You get this portrait. It also came with a piece of stiff cardboard, which is important for completists, and it had a really nice envelope with the return address and it, a cool illustration of the shadow. But Doc Savage was doing the same thing, but at this point in 38, it was the Harris painting, because the Baumhofer one, which was 35, had been very successful. Also in this period, a kind of a cool thing to collect, and this is definitely how they sold probably most issues of the magazine, is a subscription form. And so this is actually a combination for subscribing to The Shadow, Doc Savage, Avenger, and it even includes inside, at that time, all the back issues that they would sell to you, which is very cool. And this is again from Dwight's collection.
They had one pulp cover that didn't have the name of the story on it, 1931, I think it was January. And I was just curious, did they think up the title at the time?
That's a great question, and I think you've actually hit on it. Because they had to arrange that cover in advance, well in advance because of the silver ink, and it was the first time they were doing the silver ink, then they probably didn't know what it was going to be, and so they didn't put the name on it. But it was Dragon something?
I was looking at the list there, seeing if I could see it, and I wasn't sure.
Oh, okay. It'd be pretty early.
Yeah, they probably don't go back this far.
Yeah, it was like January 31.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1940 is now a really big year because now we're going to get the comic strip. We're going to get the comic book, and here's the comic strip being advertised in the comic book, which itself reprinted some of the comic strip stories. So this is like the inception of Shadow promotion.
Colorado, that's where John Donnerman worked.
Is that right?
He was, and he lived in Fullerton, north of Allentown.
Yeah, okay.
That's his newspaper where he worked before the Shadow.
Oh, I wonder if he had pulled there. He was like, "Hey, could you pick up this feature?" Because check for your local listings or your newspapers.com for these newspapers, and you can read the Shadow. And then, of course, this is the year that the Shadow serial, the by default most faithful version of the Shadow that has been on screen at this point. Very cool. And the lobby cards are so rare for this. I could only find pictures of the re-release lobby cards. But that is a real one sheet. And this is pictures of all the different kinds of posters that they had, and even some of you can see those are the actual lobby cards illustrated from the press book which shows all the different advertising. This is the outside of the press book, which is again another slightly different image, but I just love all this stuff. And then this is the one premium, I guess you consider it, of the serial, which was it's a blotter, but it also doubles as a ruler. Because that's cool, I guess. Kids love rulers. Yeah.
Every kid's got a blotter.
Yeah, but they have ink problems. They've got to blot it. But anyway, so that's cool. And so you'll notice on these, they didn't use the Shadow logo, but the Australian Day Bill did use sort of something that looks like the Shadow logo. And this other poster is from Argentina. And this is something that actually took the shadow, or there already interest maybe internationally in the shadow, but kind of sold it around the world, which is kind of cool. But then we get to the end of 1940.
The peak of shadow.
Yeah, this is peak shadow.
Yes.
This is peak shadow.
The Christmas of shadow.
It's going to be a shadow Christmas, and we all had a laugh about this, I think, the other day. But this is just great stuff. And spoiler alert, you're going to see some of these things in real life in Dwight's collection.
Yeah.
But some of these things have never been found, so we'll have to look at some other images. But this is from the Pulp. This ad. This ad is from the comic book. And because it's printed on slick paper, the photographs are actually a little bit better. But it's all the same. It's the same stuff. Shadow game. So we have to move along. So let's see. So this is another ad slick. This is not Christmas related. This is sort of after Christmas. They were still selling this stuff. In the ones in ad slick, the ones from the comic. Chief among these, of course, Big Little Books. You know them. You love them. They're easier to get than anything else on this list. And again, beautiful stuff. Actually, better Little Books. I'm sorry. I'm glad nobody corrected me from the audience. That would have been embarrassing. The Shadow Game. Very cool board game. Let's take a closer look at the actual board, which is kind of creepy and nice. The Shadow Stationery, which has kind of its own take on a kind of like angry, cartoony shadow in the sort of traditional Shadow Club logo. But that's cool. It includes envelopes, but nobody's really cracked open the cellophane to show me what they look like, even though I've asked. And then we get to, this is another one. This is that, you've seen that kid disguise yourself as a shadow. Here it really is. This is the hat, the cape, and the box and probably the only one known to exist from Dwight's collection. And in fact, he's never shown this picture before. This was exclusive for us. And he did the setup because actually people were at his house this week taking photographs for a planned coffee table book that Condé Nast is putting out about the pulp heroes and the pulp era at Street Smith.
And his collection will be featured in that, so look for more information.
Yeah, you don't have to take pictures of every slide. You can get the book in 2022. And then I should have built this up a little bit. This will haunt your dreams. This is the shadow mask.
This is what he really looked like.
Oof. And so it is interesting. I've got these great close-ups of this. Was on the left. You'll see the logo that they were using for the shadow mask. On the right, this is the one on the hat and the cape, and they're different, which I think is interesting. And also, they both say, and I never knew this until I saw these extreme close-ups. It says the Shadow magazine along the bottom. Like it was the magazine that was kind of licensed this stuff out. It wasn't part of the radio, it wasn't part of movies or anything. They wanted again to put their stamp on it. They didn't,
or even comic book,
strictly
the magazine.
Yeah, and of course they changed the Shadow Club to the Shadow Nose, and they really kind of used that a lot. Now here's something that we haven't found, and when I say we, I mean Dwight. He's really looking for this stuff, and again, if anybody has seen one of these, Dwight pays top dollar. I'll flash his phone number at the end. This is the disguise kit. We have a pretty nice picture of what the box looks like. There's a newspaper ad or sort of a classified ad for it that appeared, and then on the left is a ad slick that Dwight has it's sort of a Walter Gibson sort of scrapbook of different stuff. But 1941, we're going to get to the premium of premiums, the blue coal ring, which is actually called I think it's called the Mystic Ring in real life, but we all call it the blue coal ring.
Right.
And it's should I spoil it? They know this glow in dark ring, I guess.
Yeah.
But what's great about it is, like, when you see pictures of it, it's really hard to kind of get the relief and the sculpting of this, but it's highly detailed. There's obviously shadows on both sides, and then it even says on the upper curve there, on one side it says blue coal.
Pointy thing there.
Oh, is there a pointy thing? Oh, wow, look at that. Okay, it says blue coal. And then on the other side, it says the shadow. And these are terrible pictures, people, but this is the best I could do.
It's very hard to see.
It's really, but it's really cool when you have one of these. And generally, I think Jim showed a good picture of it because it was dirtier. When it's dirtier, you could see the relief better. This one I tried to take in extreme light so that you could kind of get the sculpting of the shadow, and he's holding a gun and all that. and then the glow in the dark, which is kind of fun.
Is that plastic?
Yes.
What?
Some sort of plastic.
Yeah, and the coal is also plastic. It's not coal.
All right. We're not sure if it's radioactive or not, but we haven't.
I don't wear it. I'm not taking any chances. And then, of course, for the completists, it's the all-important mailer and card that came with it. Along the top, that's the U.S. version. Along the bottom, the Canadian version. And so the U.S. version actually, you could order more. There's a blank to order additional rings. And I believe they were 10 cents. And there was no box top because coal doesn't have a box top. There's no proof of purchase of coal. It just comes to your house.
Yeah, just 10 cents.
Yeah. And then heat regulators, because kids love heat regulators. I don't know why that's in there. And then this is another premium that seems to be it was never announced on the radio show, the way the ring was tied in with the story, with a radio story. This one was probably a regional item given out by a local dealer. And then this is another super rare. I don't even know if we have permission to show this. This is like, I should have taken it out maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh boy, guys, this is exclusive. This is the Shadow Blue Coal Cape. And this is different from the hat and cape we saw that had, of course, the classic red highlight. So this is for Blue Coal Blue. And this was given out to salesmen who sold a lot of blue coal locally. And so it was kind of a premium sort of within the organization. And Dwight has actually owned all three that have turned up at one time or another. He's kept the nicest and he's sold the other two. But only three have turned up that we know of. And of course, so now let's talk about just sort of random giveaways, like cheap giveaways from your blue coal dealer. What goes better with coal than matches? So we've got this matchbook, and then we've got the really cool matchbook, which, they've even printed on the matches. There's a little pop-up feature where you pull down the shadow and there's criminals that are not paying back there. You got the skeleton, and again, you just local coal people would put their address on there. Really cool premium if you can find it in nice condition. A lot of times you'll find it without the matches. And they did stickers, amazing graphics, love it. And then a ton of blotters. You've probably seen this one. This is a really great one from Canada. Here's one also from Canada, I guess. And then they did a lot of these where there's a tiny little shadow in the corner, but it's mostly some other ad copy, wake up in a warm house with blue coal, so wholesome, but also listen to the shadow. So there's a lot of these. And so that takes us to, let's say, 1942, where the comic did its first premium, which is a glow-in-the-dark badge and this card, which is you kind of call a membership. It's like a pledge card, let's call it. And they're calling themselves the Secret Society of the Shadow in the comic. But up to this point, the comic had gone all in on the Shadow Club. And so they promoted the Shadow Club, told you to join the Shadow Club, told you to go buy a copy of the Pulp magazine to join the Shadow Club, all that. But here on the right, you can see a advertisement for the badge, for the glow badge, which is kind of cool. And this was on the inside cover. That's why there's all that fine print at the bottom about what issue it was. But this is from 42. And so we should pause here because actually in 1943, the Shadow Club sadly ended. Street Smith ended all of their clubs in 1943. I think the Shadow was in March, and the Doc Savage was in April, and there was no more clubs. But luckily for the Shadow, the comic book kind of picked up the slack with the glow badge, but for Doc Savage Club, that was kind of it. And so things kind of seemed to be quieting down, but in 1946 there was a whole new wave of selling the Shadow, let's say. And there were more movies. This is the Kane Richmond series that Monogram put together. Are we showing any of these?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Forget I showed this slide. And then at this time, Carrie Salt was the advertiser attached to the radio show. And I love, this is from Dwight's collection, I love this green sign. It almost looked like a green hornet or something. And there's a spider, which I love because I love the spider. But it's very late 40s graphics, you know. It's very cool. And again, they're kind of going their own way with the logo and everything. And there's Bill Lawler. He will not, he lived forever, man. He's back and Carrie Salt's really kind of not doing a lot of new stuff with the Shadow. They're kind of relying on these old images. Here's some nice, this is again from a salesman's book that Dwight has. Some of the ad slicks that you would see at the time. Again, Bill Lawler there. And there were like local premiums like this badge, which was, Hutchinson, Kansas is where Carrie Salt was. And this is somehow tied to that. I don't know. This is why we need Dwight here. I'm like, how did you make the connection with Carrie Salt? But he does. Anyway, it was on Sundays at 3. But then we get to the last great mail-away premium for the Shadow Radio Show, which is we call it the Carrie Salt ring, they call it the Magic Shadow ring. And again, glows in the dark, but instead of the figure of the Shadow, we have an alligator. Yeah. So we know why that's an alligator and not the Shadow. And it's again Carrie Salt kind of going, I guess, a little on the cheap and not doing sort of a new sculpt, but using a already established sort of sculpt from the premium vendor that they were using. And these are the multiple rings that use this particular shape. It was created for Jack Armstrong. And that's why it's got the kind of the jungle alligator motif, and it's got a green stone. Then I think it was in 1945 that Buck Rogers picked it up as the Ring of Saturn, and I'm sure there were a lot of kids wondering why there were alligators on Saturn suddenly. But now
Saturn's moons. I mean,
you're right. You know what, the moons?
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, that's what the alligators are. And then, finally we get to the Shadow Ring, which is a black stone, and alligators, which is kind of cool. So. And then, I kind of want to just go to 1954. That's where our talk ends. It
sort of peaked, and then
it kind of peaked and it went down. And I think we've kind of seen sort of most of the, the sort of the shape of that phenomenon that was the Shadow from the beginning to the end. Before we take questions, I do want to plug Dwight. He didn't ask me to do this, but he's a good guy for allowing us to show his stuff without him here. And he really does pay top dollar if you've got any rare Shadow items that you want to sell. And you can, I can probably leave that up, but I did want to leave with this fun slide, which was from a parade somewhere, which was kind of a really fun way to sell the Shadow. They dressed somebody up as the Shadow, and they promoted the radio show in some kind of parade.
And cold.
But I'm going to go back here. And should we take questions? Sure.
The one who's found in a barn, does he go out picking and find the stuff? Or does he go?
He knows guys who picks through barns. Yeah, he's got his fingers out in probably every state, and particularly Pennsylvania, because it was where a lot of coal.
Yeah, that's where blue coal was.
Where blue coal was. A lot of things do turn up in Pennsylvania, and so he's always looking at antique malls and barns here, or knows people who. And because this ad has been running like in Blood and Thunder and been running everywhere.
Illustration magazines, just a lot of different
decades. Yeah. Like people know he's the one. So if they find something in a barn, they're going to call him, and chances are they'll be rich afterwards. Here's a question.
Of the surviving magazines and comics, any idea of how often the coupon has been clipped out?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I did. When I was doing my first talk, I was talking about the heartbreak of reading a Doc Savage and finding part of the story was clipped out of the coupon. I don't know. I mean, I know in my own collection, because I had to take pictures for the talk, I would say it was like 2 out of 10, maybe.
That's probably about right. Yeah, I was going to say it's not.
We're clipped. It wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
It wasn't terrible. Does that answer? I don't.
Yeah, it's kind of.
I would love to. We need an app for that where we track, where people can.
A little touch of authenticity too.
Yes.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, and a lot of us, of course, if you're buying Doc Savage, you've probably already read the Bantam, so it's not like I don't know what Monk said. Who knows? Rich.
I've read that Walter Gibson once said that the editorial people discouraged him from making references to previous issues of the Shadow because people would write in for the issues and their stance was, we don't have any back issues. So where did that list of back issues suddenly come from?
It's interesting because that was from probably 1940-ish, because it included the Avenger, like issues from 39. Maybe by that time they kind of came around and they're like, we can make a business out of it, or we can sell extra issues. I don't know. It probably might have been the case that early on they didn't keep them because they had to print those books.
They did promote
Do you know?
that they had back issues for a while.
So, do you know when they started promoting that?
Even in the 30s,
Mm-hmm.
even early on, they did promote that they had back issues, but it wasn't complete. They said they would even send a list of available black issues.
Which is kind of what they were doing with that.
But they probably eventually ran out and maybe discouraged it later.
Interesting. Maybe there's another reason they didn't want Walter Gibson to talk, to add in a lot of continuity, and they just used that as an excuse. I don't know. Yes, right here.
Regarding the contest where people were asked to write in descriptions of the Shadow,
Yeah.
do any of those descriptions still remain? Because maybe you can confirm that Gibson just kind of ignored what everybody was writing in and created his own appearance of the Shadow.
Yes, I mean, I think we can be pretty sure that he did ignore them because he was approached, I think, in December of 1930 to start working on and the contest didn't start until later.
Yeah, it didn't end until July.
I don't know the answer to this question. Does the Shadow have a snake on his chest?
A cobra.
He does have a cobra, because that was one of the answers.
That was,
yeah, that's right.
But I mean, some of the answers were that he had slender fingers, he was thin, so he sort of fits in. But the cobra tattoo on his chest, I don't think I ever figured in this.
That didn't come up. But if you saw, they didn't announce the winners until July, so they had to go through all the people who'd collected all the clues and pick winners and stuff. So I think it had no impact on the first issue.
Yeah, I think Gibson was.
But it would be interesting to think maybe they picked an old cover because they couldn't.
Yeah.
They didn't want to depict the Shadow yet because they hadn't announced the winners. I don't know.
But I'm sure Gibson was feverishly typing away, trying to.
David.
So what did the winner actually get?
Wasn't it $1,000?
Yeah, there were several.
And they had 10 winners.
10 winners, yeah.
They had 10 winners got $1,000
back then.
What?
And annuity payments over 20 years.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
We send you stamps.
Are we at time? Any other
We're
questions?
at the time, yeah.
I forget what time we're supposed to end.
Right now.
Right now, 9:40. Okay. But no one's stopping us, so let's keep going. A question?
Last one.
So do you think those could have been prototypes and never published?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We know where, in terms of prototypes and things, we know where Street and Smith's files are.
Yeah.
I don't know about Blue Coal though.
I think if
else.
they were advertised, they would have produced something. But
Yeah. Although that pen light, it looks like a drawing. I don't think they ever made one.
Yeah,
The pencil light. I don't know.
yeah. Anyway, well, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
You've been listening to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the PulpNet, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Please visit us online at thepulp.net. Also, look for the PulpNet on Facebook and on Twitter. Thank you for listening, and keep reading the pulps. The Pulp Event podcast is copyright 2021.